Welcome to the season premiere of Frames Per Second. I'm your new host, Vicky Richards. And on our first episode, we have award-winning independent filmmaker Stephen Dest. Welcome to the show. I'm here with filmmaker Stephen Dest. Thanks for joining us, Stephen.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about what brought you into the film world.
I guess the desire to tell stories started for me pretty young. Probably like a lot of writers, I started writing poetry and lyrics and things of that nature, and started developing the short stories. And then for me, because I was interested in theater, I started developing more as a playwright, as an actor for a while. So started doing a lot of plays, adaptings, and which was great. And I enjoyed that for a long time, and I love the theater world. I still direct a lot of stage productions when the opportunities come my way. But the idea of time capsule, I guess, the idea of film, telling a story via film, knowing that it'll be there, 20, 30 years from now, really sort of piqued my interest a little bit later, sort of around university time. And from that, I started to shift a little my thoughts as a writer into screenplay work, and then started playing around with documentaries, short films, things of that nature. And enjoyed it, obviously. And so I said, maybe I could figure out a way to make a little bit of a living at it. This would be great. And it's been working out pretty good. We're having fun. I'm still trying to figure it all out. I think every filmmaker is, whether you've made 10 films or 100 films,
right.
You're still, each one's different and brings up, new challenges. So,
who are some people that you've kind of looked to throughout, your journey as inspiration or, influences?
and same thing. And a lot of my influence are probably, people who, like myself, had a background in theater and in playwriting, and shifted into film. I could go back as far as Charlie Chaplin, people of this nature. I was fascinated with how he approached his craft as an actor and also as a writer and a director. More contemporary people, heavily influenced, I think, by Woody Allen. Loved his style of work in his earlier days. And I really liked his use of the city. He uses a lot of different cities now, but certainly in his beginning of his career, predominantly shot in New York, and I just like the way that they became a character, which is different as opposed to a play. So bringing the landscape into the fold was really interesting to me. So, people like that, and everybody, people come along. Jim Jarmusch, I love his work. Obviously Hitchcock. It goes on and on. But a lot of guys, they come in with one film and they really make an impact on me. And then obviously the masters, you're constantly learning from them. So.
Yeah. So you've talked a little bit about writing. Is that primarily what you do, what you focus on?
I've yet to make a film other than some documentary work, but I storyboarded out the treatments for those as well. I've yet to make a film that I didn't write, but I'm not saying I would turn that opportunity away.
Right.
It's just the way it's been going so far. I have an idea and I start developing it as a writer. Probably, knowing that I'm going to direct it, which is, probably different and a different approach. When you're going to be the writer, director, and a producer, you're going to have your hands on it a lot. I think there's pros and cons to that as a writer, but right now that's the way it's going. Writer, director, but it's not set in stone. And when I was mentioning earlier, I direct a lot of theater. Those are plays I have to say I didn't write, so right. I get to scratch that, in that form. So with film, it sort of becomes a little bit, without being a control freak or anything, but it becomes that thing where I start writing it and then eventually get it on the screen somehow, start shooting it.
So how's your theater background sort of shaped the way you work in film?
And I'm not the first guy to sort of, start
right.
making films that, sits here and tells you that he used to do theater. And there's a lot of guys who haven't, I don't come from that world. I know a lot of those guys. I still respect them a lot. I learned from them. They come at it from a different approach. They were You know, they went to school for film. They studied strictly film. You know, maybe dabbled a little bit in theater, as opposed to I was a professional actor. I was a professional theater director. So taking that into the film world, I think there's pros and cons to that as well. You know, having been an actor, I think really helps when casting and working with actors. I feel like, you know, I hear them. You know, some of the drawbacks could be, you know, not knowing every component of the technical end of it, but that's where you bring in the right people. So I'm a filmmaker who directs. I don't shoot my own films. I hire director of photographies. I hire DPs, and I work collaboratively well, which I think you get from theater more so. You know, so once again, you know, bringing in the right team of people is really key for me. To let me just focus on the actors and telling my story, and making sure that everyone else give them a chance to do their thing, they're masters at, or at least becoming masters at. You know, so, and that's a lot of fun. I like that.
So what kind of work have you been doing recently?
Well, like I said, I just wrapped up the 2013 festival circuit with my feature film, My Brother Jack, and now I'm in development with a new feature film. It's based on a true story. And it's called, working title right now is I Am Shakespeare, the Henry Green story. And it tells the true story of this young man, Henry Green.
Well, we have a little trailer clip of your film that you just wrapped, My Brother Jack. So just give us a little quick introduction about, you know, what it's about.
Sure. So My Brother Jack, it's a psychological thriller. It was shot in New Haven, Connecticut. It sort of becomes this whodunit story. These two brothers, Jack and Vincent's parents are tragically murdered when they're young boys, and we sort of fast forward 20 years later, and we find out that all is not well, and that the person accused of the murders may have not been the only one involved in it, which the younger brother Vincent always suspected that maybe something was off about it. Jack sort of lived in denial about it, didn't really care, you know, not that he didn't care, but certainly tried to avoid it, submerged himself in his art world and was being successful and didn't really want to rock that boat, so to speak. But Vincent really, he suffered from sleep paralysis, and he really struggled with trying to figure out what really happened that night. So we sort of follow their journey as brothers to solve this mystery. But you're not watching it the way you would a true detective story or a crime show. You're really watching, you know, almost a romance, a bromance, so as it were, literally. You know, you're really watching two brothers who truly love each other, you know, struggle through this situation. And, you know, it's beautifully performed by Malcolm Madera and John Thorndike.
Yeah, sounds definitely interesting. So let's take a quick look at the trailer.
Okay. Yeah, great.
Jack? Jack? Jack, are you there? I'm sorry for what I did. And I can't help it. I am who I am. I'm your brother.
You know, I got out yesterday.
Yeah, I know. Everybody knows.
If I asked you to keep an eye on someone, you think you can do that?
Like babysitting.
Babysitting.
You know, this is serious. He could have a heart attack and die. Or if he has sleep apnea, which he probably does, he could just stop breathing entirely in the middle of one of these attacks.
I'm Alex.
You know, my brother's been checking up on me ever since we were kids. You don't want to blow this job, I suggest you stick pretty close to me.
Here's the brothers I'm looking for.
Arthur Wood was murdered last night. You're both suspects.
Did you kill Arthur Wood?
What if I did?
I did the best I could for both of you. You both made your own choices.
It wasn't enough. It was just a dream, right?
I don't think so. I can't get this image out of my head. It's a tattoo, a flower. So I don't know what it has to do with anything.
I'm gonna tell Paul it was me who did it.
Why?
Protect Vince.
We found some new evidence that links Vincent to the murder.
I gotta find Vincent.
Wait, wait, wait!
be okay.
What did I do?
I've got a job to do today.
I've got a job to do today.
Have a good first day at work, Mom.
Your donations to Goodwill fund job training programs right in your community.
Feels good to start fresh, right?
Sure does.
And like that, you're a job creator.
So before the break, we showed your trailer for My Brother Jack. Kind of talk us through the story. What made you want to tell it?
Yeah, you know, sometimes you write a screenplay and it's done in 6 months or maybe sometimes even less. That's not the case with My Brother Jack. It was a long journey for me as a writer. Once we went into development, like once the script was done and it was like, okay, I met with my first producer, David McNiven, and he's like, what do you want to do? And it's like, this is what we want to do. And it came together really, really fast, which is great, for an independent filmmaker, because sometimes you sit there and you go, all right, we're going to go make our movie, and 5 years later, you're maybe still trying to figure out how to make it. So fortunately, once the script was actually done, that journey was really quick and came together nicely. And I'm really fortunate. I had a great team of people around me to make that happen. The writing was all me for most of the journey, so it took a little longer. I was writing it. It first started as a spec deal, which means I was writing a script for a company, for a film company, for development purposes. And during that time, the two brothers sort of came out of that story. Jack and Vincent, I don't know if their names were Jack and Vincent at the time, but something about that relationship stuck with me. And I said, I'm going to keep a little bit of this and maybe return to it. And I did, and I started to sort of follow their journey. And it kind of came and went with sort of these darker tones and sort of very Shakespearean, Hamlet-esque tragedies of parental loss at a young age and trying to figure this stuff out. But it was never intended at that time to be like a psychological thriller. There was no cop in the first draft. There was no sort of maybe one of the brothers is guilty of something. None of that came early on. A lot of it was just sort of two young men trying to figure out the meaning of life after such a loss in their childhood. But then it started shifting really fast into more of a psychological thriller and a whodunit once I kind of put the smoking gun in the room, and that really triggered a lot of the development of the script in those years. And then so by the fifth year of on and off with the rewrites of everything, it came together, and that eventually got what everyone's seeing now.
Yeah. Yeah, talk a little bit about, I guess, the character development. Do you have a favorite character?
Yeah, I have a cameo in it. I played Thomas,
so obviously you're your favorite character.
Curator. And, it was my favorite day on set, I'll tell you that much, because I was told what to do and I wasn't telling other people what to do. So that was nice, and I got to wear a costume. That was fun. I had a tie. So I liked Thomas, that was fun, but certainly not my favorite character. That was just a joke. But I love all of them. I've had people come up, I'm a male, in case you guys haven't figured that out yet, I'm a man. So a lot of times people after viewing the film will come up to me and say, oh, are you Vincent? Are you Jack? Is that, do you have brothers? I do. I'm the youngest of 5, so yes, I have brothers. But I'm also Renee and Alex and the uncle and the killer. I'm all these characters. I wrote all these characters, and there's a little bit of me in all of them. But yeah, I mean, if you had to, for a Trivial Pursuit question, I would say I really connect with Vincent and sort of what he's going through throughout the story. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
And John Thorndyke looks like James Dean, so who wouldn't want to look like James Dean? So I like a lot about Vincent. As do many people. Yeah.
Well, we have a little clip of a scene with Uncle Larry, one of the characters, so I guess just introduce us to him a little.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, Larry's played by the actor Mark Bukowski. You might recognize him for Boardwalk Empire. He's a brilliant New York stage and film actor. I was very fortunate to cast him in the role. He's an art teacher. He's a professor at some nebulous college in Connecticut, without promoting any particular university. He keeps to himself. He likes things to be organized. He raised the two brothers after the loss of his own brother, obviously, their father and their mother. But there's something a little off about him, nothing so dark or sinister, or so it appears, just a protective uncle of two brothers. But one, Jack went on to a lot of success, and he protects that. And as an art professor and having a nephew who's a successful artist, obviously he cares about that. It's on a lot of different levels. And Vincent, he never really was able to connect with, and he sort of, that thing happens a lot of times, and whether you're an uncle or a father, you kind of connect to one sibling over the other, and so. But that's uncles, and that's Uncle Larry. And in this scene, I believe I think they were going to say he's teaching, so he's got a classroom full of hopeful artists. Yeah.
Let's take a look.
All right.
You shouldn't be afraid to create something painful. It's in all of us. We all have afflictions that don't need to be forgotten. In fact, if done properly, most people would like to see something painful come to life. Helps us to understand better. Nobody wants to express how they truly feel. People want to protect themselves. It's up to you, as the artist, to pull it out of them. Let them know it's okay. And charge them a ridiculous amount of money for it.
So, how did your actors really respond to your story?
Well. And I say that with a lot of pride. The script made its way through a lot of channels, which it needs to when you're looking to get talented actors like Mark, and you're looking for funding and stuff. So there's a lot of what they call heat. There was a lot of heat on the script itself, so as a writer, I was really proud of that. It was getting in the hands of a lot of actors. I'm not going to name drop or anything like that. It's just, but there were, a lot of attention on the script from actors and casting directors, and some great DPs came around interested in shooting the film, and I was fortunate to finally land Kareem Duran out of LA and brought his team in to Connecticut. So it's great. So the script, if it's not on the page, it's not on the stage. It's a sort of theatrical term, but it's probably even more so with film. It's got to be there because you're going to lose a lot. What you wrote and what you get. Now, usually writers get kicked off the set when you make a film, but if you're directing it as well, they can't do that to you. They'll try though, but you have to kind of let that part of your side go. You got to let that writer side go, right. knowing that it's a visual format, right. And the visuals got to push it, not so much. So you got to be open.
Trust them to really take your vision and visualize it for others.
And so you got to have that split personality. Trust the director, over the writer, even though he's you.
Yeah.
But and you can't, because then you start talking to yourself a lot, and then people start to leave.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful of that. But no, but good people around me really helps with that.
Yeah,
I recommend
definitely.
it. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about the logistics of the picture when we come back, but we got to go to a quick commercial break, so stay tuned.
Okay.
Hey, Mom. I got the job.
You've got the job. Welcome aboard.
I've got a job to do today.
Have a good first day at work, Mom.
Donate to Goodwill. Help provide job training in your community.
I'm here with Stephen Dest, where we've been talking about his award-winning independent film, My Brother Jack. So in this film, one of the main characters has a struggle with sleep paralysis. Okay. Now, is that something you'd had experience with, or did you do a lot of research on it?
No, I sleep really well. In fact, I was sleeping earlier. The character of Vincent, I knew he was off. Things I was talking about earlier, and some of the sort of first and second drafts. It was like insert problem here. But I was trying to avoid some of the more obvious choices, alcoholism, drug abuse, things like that, which I'm a fan of all those cinematically, right? I mean, cinematically, they're great. I mean, and they touch on a lot of different nerves and things of that nature. But it just didn't feel right for this character and for this particular story. So I was looking a little bit more into some kind of something off about him in a mental capacity, but it wasn't really, I wasn't going into like bipolar and things like that. But I'd mentioned earlier how, the success of this film isn't just because of me, but a lot of other great people. I have he's an actor in the film as well, but I have a writing partner, Matt Velakis, and he suffers from sleep paralysis. So sort of towards the tail end of the final draft, he and I would meet in New York City and spend a lot of hours together just developing that aspect of the story, which came from a lot of his own personal experiences, and then and then some actual documentation and research and that nature. But yeah, so a lot of it, was luckily or not so much for Matt to suffer from sleep paralysis,
Right.
but it was a great sort of place to go with his sort of illness.
Yeah, well, we have a clip of a little discussion that they have about it. You want to just introduce that to us, the characters that we see.
Yeah, so Jack obviously is concerned about his brother. He's always been concerned about him, but things seem to be getting worse. So he calls a friend of his who's a doctor at the sleep clinic to give him a little more insight into what's really going on and what new concerns they should start to have, especially with the release of their parents' murderer and stuff. Obviously, their emotions are heightened right now. So, so that's what we're going to see.
Yeah, all right, let's check it out.
The old hag was a demon that sailors in Newfoundland reported would haunt them in the night and steal their breath away while they slept.
You still talking about Vincent?
Yeah, of course. Look, this happens everywhere. I honestly haven't seen that many cases of it at the sleep clinic, but I would guess that Vincent is suffering from some form of sleep paralysis.
Yeah, he said he can't move.
Exactly. Everybody experiences this to some degree. In the REM state, when you're dreaming, your body produces a hormone that paralyzes the muscles to keep you from flailing, so you don't jump out a window or something.
Well, if he's dreaming, why is he so aware of his surroundings?
Well, we don't know, actually. There have been studies that have found that in this state, the only muscles to move are in the eyes, so maybe he sees, or maybe it's sense memory kicking in. With sleep paralysis, it's often accompanied by these vivid hallucinations. The sense that someone's in the room or hovering over you, the sound of footsteps or doors opening and closing, voices, all pretty terrifying.
Some heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty fascinating. So as an independent filmmaker, usually, the logistics, definitely very difficult to work out. How did you come about your funding and, the whole process? What was that like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first and foremost for me as the writer of the script, I wanted to make sure that I had a solid script before you start going knocking on doors, whether it's actors or investors and producers and everyone involved. So once I finally got to that place and I felt good about what we had as far as the story goes, I met with my first producer, David McNiven, and we sat down and sort of, forged out a little bit of a strategy for the pre-production year, which was, well, what's really going on right now in filmmaking. It's a lot of crowdfunding, so we were one of the first independent films to raise over $20,000 with our Kickstarter, which doesn't seem like anything now because, Spike Lee and everybody else are using it and they're raising millions on it. But before they got involved with it, still don't know why they're involved with it, but that's fine. And maybe in some ways it raises the profile of it. But at that time it was a lot of money, and it gave us enough money to get into pre-production, build a campaign, hire a casting director, things of this nature.
Yeah.
So we were off and running with that. Started scouting locations. I knew I was going to shoot it in New Haven. So, and that city was great, and they really opened their doors to me. I make no mistake about it. I could not have made the film look or feel or anything about this film without the generosity of the city. They really got behind it, and it was great. really important when you're a small independent film.
Yeah.
So where you're actually shooting it really matters. You know, and especially if they're excited about it, which they were, and I'm forever grateful for that. And then yeah, but you know, the Kickstarter money was great. We did 3 successful campaigns, but eventually it just gave us more opportunities to open up into other avenues and seek private investors, and that finally really was the money that we needed to go, okay, we can, you know, we can pay some people and we can make a good film.
Yeah.
So, and that was it. And I brought a crew in, guys I knew from Los Angeles, and we put them up in Connecticut, and I hired Silas Finch, whose artwork is used in the film, and he was key to being there. He was on set every day. He was helping Malcolm Madera, you know, look genuine. Let's face it. When actors play doctors, they don't really perform the surgery. So I hope not. So you know, there's things of that nature. So once again, having the right people around, and you know, Silas was instrumental in that aspect of it. With the stuff I mentioned earlier about the sleep paralysis, and Matt's contribution to that was huge. And you know, so it came together nicely with a really great team.
Yeah. And now this was your first feature length that you've worked on. You know, other than the length itself, what was different from what you've done in the past?
Well, more days. I mean, you know, you're shooting a lot more days than if you're making a short film or a documentary. So in longer days, you know, certainly the days are longer because you have to get a lot of material, especially with a smaller budget. You have to get a lot of material in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
So, and a bigger team of people. I mean, just a huge group. You know, costume designer, makeup artist, assistant makeup artist, PAs. You know, things of this nature. And ultimately, you know, and shaping a story that you know is going to be close to 2 hours. I think ultimately, when that question is asked to me, to me that's the biggest thing. You know, all those other things, yeah, we assume that. Okay, obviously more days, you know, more donuts. I mean, everything's going to be more and more and more. But I think the real difference is the development in the arc of a story and pace.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of great short films, you know, and I love short films, and I've made short films. But the reason they're shorts is because that's all they can be.
Right.
And I've seen people try to develop something a little bit longer, and it's very seldom that it works. You know,
right. And this was received really well. Talk a little bit about your experience on the festival circuit, some of the awards that you...
Yeah. So I guess we world premiered it at the Bahamas International Film Festival. We were in competition there in the New Visions. That was a great introduction to the film festival community, and it's very much that. It is a community. You're going to see the same on the circuit that year, all over the world. You're going to run into a lot of the same people, judges, filmmakers, program directors. So, and they become your friends. They become your allies. You know, you're in these great places. Festivals are usually in these really great cities and, you know, towns around the world, and it's nice to be around people you're familiar with, you know, because you're leaving your family, you're leaving your friends, so of this nature. Sometimes the crew and the actors can come, but a lot of festivals I had to go to on my own. So it's nice to see familiar faces on the circuit. So yeah, so we world premiered at the Bahama International Film Festival. We went throughout the year all over with the film. We won a couple Best Pictures, Best Director. And our last festival was at the Napa Valley Film Festival, where we won Best Cinematography. So my DP, Kareem Duran, who was fortunate to be there at the awards ceremony with me, it was a great night, and deservingly so on our parts. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have, but thank you so much for stopping by. And if you guys want to learn a little bit more about my brother Jack, you can visit his website at stephendest.com or the movie website, mybrotherjack.com. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.